hear some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Welcome to the channel, everybody. This is StudPup Media, the channel where I talk all kinds of pop culture topics, ratings, and reactions so we can have some fun. I'm your host, Steven Pfeiffer, aka Stevie StudPup, and I'm talking my all-time favorite film franchise today, The Terminator. Just in time, because I think the whole franchise has been terminated. With the latest installment, Dark Fate, bombing domestically, worldwide, and just losing a ton of money for the studios, I think it's time to go ahead and do a farewell to the franchise by doing the rankings from worst to first and everything in between. And let me know what you guys think about the rankings in the comment section below. I'm going to go ahead and start with number 6, the controversial pick, Terminator Salvation. For me, I just did not care for this movie. I even tried to do a recent rewatch, tried to find some good stuff, which there are some, but for me, I just didn't like the fact they did not bring back the actual Arnold Schwarzenegger. Doing a CGI cameo was pretty much a slap in the face to the fan base, if you ask me. Overall, the action scenes were okay, but the set pieces looked like they were more so out of Mad Max, and I felt like it was kind of cheap, and I didn't like the fact that almost everything took place in the day. I felt like all the previous installments, the best parts about the future scenes where they were night-based, and they just looked great with all the different lasers coming out, and the contrasting colors worked well, but everything in the daylight in this one just didn't work well for me. It had a darker tone and a theme overall, which I liked. They went back to the roots there, to the original film, but it was not a fun film this time around. It just didn't have it what it was needing. The previous installments had the right sense of humor at the right times, even if it was very minimal. This one just didn't have anything I was looking for. I like the fact that they did go to the concept of looking to the future and having that actual war against the machines, and so that was working for it. And of course, using Christian Bale as John Connor, pretty much an easy choice for the studios, I'm sure, on casting, because he just came off the biggest film of all time at that point in The Dark Knight with Batman. I think probably the best part about this whole film is the infamous rant off scenes that he did, where he just tore apart this guy that worked behind the scenes on everything. And if you haven't seen it, definitely YouTube it, because it's pretty awesome. And I feel horrible for this poor soul, because this guy he got ripped a new one, and Christian Bale just told him how he really felt. So this film has pretty much not a lot going for it other than Christian Bale off screen with his rant and maybe some things on screen a little bit. I did like the action, but overall the story failed for me, and then I didn't like how they didn't bring back Arnold. So to me, Terminator Salvation falls in last place at number 6. And on to number 5, T3 Rise of the Machines. And I think everybody can agree this one deserves to be somewhere near the bottom of the list. But for me, I was just happy that they brought back the series in general. It had been about 12 years since the last one, and it was just long overdue for a return. But they did a horrible job with casting. Nick Stahl as John Connor just didn't work, and I didn't like that character at all. I didn't understand how he just became pretty much a pansy at this point, lost all style as far as military skills and tactical strategies, and he was just pretty much a zombie at this point, as well as Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back. I was excited to see him on the big screen after becoming the Governor and taking some time off from Hollywood, but he just didn't do very well in this role. I don't think he was as excited as he should have been, honestly. He's even admitted to pretty much taking this role for a paycheck, if I remember right, so I thought that was kind of a low point for the series. I didn't like the casting overall. And then the villain. I didn't really care for the Terminatrix at all. I felt like it was a good idea to use a female as far as that role, but I didn't like the idea overall as far as the character. It looked cheap. It was definitely a downgrade from the T-1000, and just stupid humor at times with the breast enhancement. I didn't understand that. That was really ridiculous and unnecessary. And then just overall, when they were using all the actual cool effects that this character can do, nothing was practical, so it just didn't seem real or believable. Of course, this film does have some good things going for it. Like I said earlier, I like the fact that they did bring the series back overall. I love some of the action scenes as far as the highway scene. I felt like that's pretty much the highlight of it all. That one definitely stands out still. It was really well shot and well done. It looks good, and so I think that was definitely something that kind of has a redeeming factor to it. And then the twist ending. I think the fact that you can't stop Judgment Day. It's a little bit of a depressing ending that we didn't see coming, but hey, it made for a good story overall, and it was just it was an effective way that if it was going to end the Terminator franchise, I felt this was a good way to do it, but left it open just enough for the characters surviving with John Connor that if you want to do another sequel, here you go. At least you got the characters still around. And of course, you can always bring back Arnold somehow, some way. They always find a way to do so. So T3 comes in at number 5. On to number 4. Terminator Genesis. And for me, this was the one I probably had the highest anticipation for of all the recent ones, because I like the fact that they went back to the original ones and decided, let's go ahead and have some elements there, show some of those, but let's mix it up. Let's start twisting some things around. And it definitely felt like a fan fiction film, which I thought was kind of cool. All the what ifs, what if Sarah Connor actually knew about all this ahead of time? And what if there was another Terminator that was there and it was a good Arnold versus a bad Arnold? So there was all these little tidbits that were mixed in that were fun, but they obviously didn't work very well. And I didn't like that they had John Connor becoming a Terminator. It didn't look good. It didn't make sense. And overall, it left so many unanswered questions, and that's what I think was the worst part about this film. Is they were obviously setting it up for another installment, actually a trilogy, but it just didn't do well enough. Audiences didn't care. It didn't make enough money, and so it left so many unanswered questions that I think that's why this film just kind of sucks overall, because when you just try to go back and watch this one alone, it makes it very hard to do so because you just don't know what's going on. And then after the first 20 minutes, having all the twists of all the original films, I just don't care at that point. It just, to me, it loses all credibility. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't care about the fact that iPads are going to be what's starting to kill everybody now. It's just not as effective. So tying it into the original ones, and Arnold does a really great performance overall in this film. But for me, it just makes me want to go back and watch the first couple of films again. So Terminator Genesis comes in at number 4. And now we're on to the top half, the good stuff. Number 3, I don't even know if I'd really call it the good stuff per se, and that's the latest installment, Dark Fate. This one, after giving it a couple days to digest, I'm a little bit mixed on it, honestly. At first, I was pretty excited. I thought it was okay. I went in with very low expectations, going in to see it at the theater, and so I think that's why it said okay at first. But, after kind of thinking it over, I was like, nah, they just didn't do a good job with that story. I liked that it was more dark and it was rated R. I liked that tone. That's what the film really needed, and as far as the franchise being more serious, but still, having the right sense of humor to kind of feel like those earlier installments. And I love the fact that they brought back Linda Hamilton. She stole the show for me. She's still a badass in that character, and her new objective as far as being a Terminator hunter, great idea. And I liked how, they concluded the Arnold character as a T-800. There's that delivery of him saying, I won't be back, to some other characters, but he's looking to the audience and just kind of, pretty much kind of winking and saying, thank you guys for, enjoying the ride with me, but I'm definitely hanging it up. It's been a fun ride, but, we need to end it at some point. And so I like the fact they brought back the characters that we love. I liked the twist, honestly, the idea of killing off John Connor. I was okay with that. I thought that was an okay way to continue the story. It made sense in a way, but it was done way too quickly for it to instantly happen. Especially for me, I read so much about there's going to be Eddie Furlong on the John Connor character, and it's going to take place in 1998. It's going to be right after where T2 left off, and I'm like, great, if that's what a majority of the film is going to be, it should be awesome. There's no way this film can fail, but it was like 5 minutes at the most of that particular style, and for them to kill off this protagonist that we've grown to love for so long, I just thought that was dumb. Definitely, it was a bold choice on their part, but it did not work out well, and I think that's why a lot of fans did not enjoy this particular film, because the character they tried to replace John Connor with, Danny Ramos, was just somebody we didn't care for. I tried my hardest to really, enjoy this particular character and, be somebody that, that you could hopefully, really enjoy and become emotionally attached with if they're going to make more sequels based around her and she's the savior of humanity. But you just didn't care. I personally did. I was like, man, she sucks. I'd rather see more of Grace. I thought she was awesome. I'd rather she be the savior, do something a little bit different, not just a human, but, kind of an advanced human that has to save us. That makes more sense if that's what you're going to end up doing, and not just, some female that's going to take over now just opposing gender that's going to do the same thing. If that's the only real twist we're going to have now, I mean, I don't mind that, but it just wasn't a character that I really cared about, because they didn't do nearly enough with her. They tried killing off all of her loved ones, but she was pretty much a background character to make that, basically the whole movie. And when they try to make her the main thing, I was more distracted by, like Grace or, the Rev 9 or Arnold or whoever else happened to be there. So I just did not care for her. And Rev 9 for me, I thought it was a great idea. I love the fact that he could split off, have his endoskeleton come after you, but also have his, the skin, that kind of that T-1000 style that can kind of morph. I thought that was really cool. So it came at you twice as hard. But when he was one thing, he was Rubber Man, and I just did not like that. He was flopping around all over the place, and the CGI just kind of took over and became just too overwhelming and distracting for me. And there's not enough practical effects, in any of these latter installments, and I think that's, to me, is not really. Hollywood obviously does that. They've tried to do everything as big and amazing and as high budget as possible, but the earlier installments, they use them at the right time, but with the villains, there's just nothing practical about them. There's nothing realistic, and I think that's what takes me out of it. And Rev 9, good idea, but on execution, it just failed horribly. And so, Dark Fate, it had some cool twists. It was a good idea as far as story, but everything just was not executed very well or effectively. And I think it was not, this isn't the film I'm going to say that's, killed or terminated the franchise, if you will, but I think it's you tried everything you possibly could at this point with the characters that you already had, especially with Arnold, and I think he's pretty much done. So I think the only thing that you can possibly do if you're going to continue with the franchise is reboot it, and you have to pass that torch on to somebody else to play the Terminator role. And I would love to see somebody like The Rock be kind of more of a villainous style character, very menacing, very few lines, leave the humor at the door. There's none of that stuff needs to be on there. Just make it a very dark film, very rated R, of course, very bloody if you need to, and just have somebody like that, Vin Diesel, The Rock, I don't care, somebody that's real big like that can have a good delivery with their lines, but not many of them, so that they're effective and that you care enough, and have some good a good protagonist, somebody that we can actually believe and somebody that we can become attached to throughout that process. So I think if you're going to continue with Terminator, you just have to reboot it and start from scratch. Don't try to, keep killing off characters that are already around or try to, confuse the timeline even more than it already is. Just start over. Make it something that we can, relate to and somebody we care about. Let's talk the top two films now. These are the ones that I think everybody loves the most, and that's just because they have that heart, they have that emotion, they have the characters that really become, developed at the right points and deliver the right sense of humor at the right time. So everything is just done effectively, execution-wise. And for me, though, it's hard. I think it really depends on what you're in the mood for at that point, action or horror, because I think that's really kind of the dividing line between the two as far as genre and overall tone to them. For me, I definitely kind of prefer the action. I love horror films the best overall, but when it comes to the Terminator franchise, number two for me is the original Terminator. And I love how it is legit scary. I think that's a good selling point for it. I like that it does it has a love story there, so it has something kind of for everybody overall. But at times, I had to find some things, and it was really hard for this film, the negativities. For me, when I went back and rewatched it, I was like, the acting is not the best. I know a lot of these actors are really early in their careers, but at the same time, the delivery on some of the lines, it was just kind of, I'd laugh out loud if you will. It was just really, it was really bad. And so the bad acting, was there, but I can definitely forgive that. The easy thing to kind of pick at is the fact that you've got outdated CGI, but this film's over 30 years old, so you have to give it some credit for back then. It was definitely groundbreaking. It was something people appreciated for what it was because you didn't see it on every film practically. And I think that's what the biggest thing is. If you try to get some younger audiences in to see this film or try to get them to go back and fall in love with the Terminator and rewatch this, they're going to not care for it as much because we've been spoiled so much today that it's a little bit harder to watch films like that unless you grew up with them, already had were able to appreciate them early on. Not saying that's for the case for everybody, but I think that might be what kind of turns some people off. It's just it is a little bit outdated compared to what we're capable of doing today. And the obvious thing that I think is really negative is just the confusion overall on the whole time travel element. If you start to think about it too much, your head will literally start to hurt. How are you able to have your dad go back in time and to fall in love with your mom, and just to be able to create you, but you have to be able to meet him, well after the fact. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. It gets to be really confusing, and it's one of those things that it's a very big plot hole. So if you aren't watching your step, you'll definitely fall into a pretty big plot hole there, if you ask me. So, but it's easy to forgive. I don't think that they want you to think too much about that part. They just want you to enjoy the story overall. I think, that's even part of a twist, is the fact that the Kyle Reese character is the dad of John Connor. They wait for a while to even tell that to the audience, and I like that twist. But when you discover that and you start to think more about it, you're like, oh man, my head hurts right now. I can't even do it. Let's just see the action and let's see the robots. So, but yeah, definitely it has a lot going for it. This film, Arnold, this was pretty much the iconic role for him. This is where his career really began, as far as being in a film that became really big and really allowed him to blossom and do some other really big things, especially at that time. And so I love the classic Arnold in this role. And if you're going to look for an action scene in particular, as far as the one that really stands out for this film, I love the police station scene. When he comes in, he's asking for Sarah Connor, and they tell him just to go away. And he just kind of looks and says, "I'll be back." And that's the first time we ever hear that line. And it's such a famous quote. And then right after that, he just kind of drives in. He just tears apart the police station and starts blowing everybody away. And it's that's one of the things that makes it so scary. But I think it's really well done, and it was well shot. It was really dark, but he just takes everybody out, and he just has such a very robotic look the whole time. And I think that's what really made Arnold the right choice for this character. He just looks so menacing, and he looks almost robotic in the role, and does a great job with the few lines that he does have. And so I think that's one of the nice things about the Terminator in this particular installment, is that they don't have to have him chuckling and giving one-liners. And so I love the overall action. I don't mind the outdated CGI, and I love Arnold in his iconic role. And so the Terminator to me is number 2, but still one of the best films of all time. For me though, number 1 on this list, and one of my all-time favorite films, that's for sure, is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And a lot of people would probably agree this one deserves to be in that top slot. With that villain T-1000, definitely by far the best villain in the whole series. It was really, especially at that time, groundbreaking as far as those style of effects. And even when you watch it today, it still looks awesome and holds up. It was really well done. I really love all the special effects, the visual effects, everything about it was really well shot. They were able to incorporate some of the practical things that you need and not go too far overboard with that CGI. So I think that's why you're able to really feel for the characters. You're able to really, it seems more realistic and believable in my opinion. And the other thing that I think really stands out about this film that's a high point is a soundtrack. That's what really gives that emotional feel to it. In every single scene, from the intro music, Guns N' Roses at one point, and then everything all the way at the end. It just has it right, all at the right times. It's not too distracting, but it really just goes with the scene the way that it's necessary, and it just feels right. And so I think the soundtrack is amazing. And I've got to find some negatives in it for this particular film. I could go on and on about all the good stuff, but as far as the bad, I'm not a huge fan of the bad of the bone coming on. I think that the humor at times can be a little bit silly with the way that they're trying to make the character of the Terminator being able to adapt to society. I like the idea, but it was a little cheesy, honestly. And so when you go back and rewatch it, you get a chuckle, but it's it's a little bit silly. And I didn't get nearly enough of the T-1000. I think that's what everybody will say, is they want more Robert Patrick. This is definitely the best performance of his career by far. Like I said, it was the greatest villain in the whole entire franchise, and I just wanted to see more of him. I didn't care if it was just him killing somebody or chasing them, or a little bit more of his background would have been kind of nice to know how they developed that character and why. Just something along those lines would have been really cool to see how they're able to even get that type of technology. So love the T-1000, wish we had some more of that. And then the main thing I think, especially going back and rewatching it, is whiny Edward Furlong. Come on, Terminator. I get so sick of hearing that whiny voice. He's going through puberty literally through filming of this, and you can hear it the way his voice is crackling throughout. But I can't complain too much. I love Eddie Furlong on this character, but I think the whininess definitely comes through. You can feel it, and it just you kind of wince and grit your teeth a little bit. But I still love that character. I feel like he's by far the best one to portray the role, and that's why I was so excited to have him come back for the newest installment. So I felt cheated overall when it was literally just some crappy CGI de-aging process, and he was done within about 1 to 2 minutes of on-screen time. And so I felt robbed there, but I think that's maybe one thing. He was just a little bit whiny, and then maybe him becoming hitting adulthood while off screen. So, but overall, it's one of my favorite films. I think everybody will love this installment. But let me know what you guys think, what your rankings are in the comments section down below. I'm interested if there's, maybe some people that find the newer ones to be some of the better ones. And so let me know what you think. Once again, hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you never miss anything. I'm definitely planning to do more of these reviews, rankings, and I want to do some reaction to some trailer videos too. There's going to be lots of good films coming out here pretty soon with the holidays coming up. Oscar season's going to be following that, so I want to make sure to stay tuned on all those films that are going to be coming out, but still talk some of these classics that we all love. Review some of the ones that are some of my all-time favorites. There's some surprises in there. So stay tuned to that. You got to make sure to hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you never miss out. I really appreciate it, guys. Till next time, have a good one.